Hello everyone, my name is Yaryna Serkez. I create data visualizations and write stories at the New York Times Opinion. I am thrilled to be part of the Outlier conference this year and chat about some unconventional and experimental data visualizations that our team created over the last couple of years. As I said, I'm super excited. I hope you are too, so let's dive in. But before we proceed, I would hide myself so I don't obscure slides and you see the charts in their full glory. Alright. Big newsrooms have huge and versatile audience. And in our work, we as journalists should account for people with different backgrounds, experiences, and data literacy levels. One could argue that we should present data in the simplest and most straightforward way possible that would facilitate a quick and effortless read. In fact, this might be the right way to go in certain circumstances. However, I believe that with a smart approach and some elegant design decisions, we could introduce more variety to our work. Truth being told, our most successful and interesting projects go beyond the bare minimum of data presentation and spark our readers' attention, inviting them to explore the data further. Now, a small personal news disclaimer. 2 months ago, I had my first child. For me, it turned into this deeply transformative experience that changed my perspective on so many things. This little human, little bundle of responsibilities is still quite helpless as any child of his age, but he is ferociously curious. Even the most mundane objects excite him. Everything is new to him, as it was to every one of us at some point. Observing him learn and explore complexity around him make me wonder if learning is intrinsically humane, should we really be afraid of novelty then? Let's take baby steps here. Utilizing familiarity and building off top of it is a subtle approach of creative, innovative designs without introducing much of friction. This approach is particularly fruitful when working with basic data visualization forms. Let's take rudder chart for instance. It's great for representing multidimensional data, but it falls short when we want to add geographical context. However, it doesn't mean we shouldn't use it at all. What if we add a data form that can communicate the geographical dimension? What if for every geographical unit that we have, we create a separate radar chart and place it inside a cartogram grid? Last year, I was working on a story about COVID-19 vaccination barriers across the US. The analysis itself included different aspects, and every place had its strong and weak sides. Obviously, this could have been just a set of 5 choropleth maps. But the question we were trying to answer, or frankly speaking, 2 questions, were such. Which states struggle the most and what types of issues are the most critical? So having 5 different maps for 5 different metrics trying to answer 2 different questions would require a lot of mental effort for keeping track and comparing the data. But this merged layout keeps everything in one place without sacrificing readability and, most importantly, data granularity. That being said, frankly, this design is not the most simplistic one. So, to create a smoother experience for our readers, we introduced the radar chart early in the story. So, by the time our readers get to the more sophisticated display, they are already familiar with its building blocks. Heat maps use color to communicate continuous data. But what if we want to show both continuous as well as binary values, such as increase and decrease variables. Can we find another symbol or a visual form, perhaps, that does just like that does just that? Can we combine them? Can we make an arrow heat map? Well, yeah, sure, why not? This idea was beautifully executed in a story about inflation and its main markers by Stuart Thompson and John Bivens. The visualization still looks pretty much like a heat map. However, a small arrowhead emphasized the trend and worked nicely with the color legend integrated in the text. Similar tactic of gradual introduction of visual form and repeating it throughout the story is used here. After all, if we can make this learning experience smoother and easier for our readers, why shouldn't we? In fact, it's not only chart types we can mix and match. Borrowing some visual clues from popular notions and well-established cultural symbols could be another option. Bees forms are usually good for visualizing distribution. That's pretty neat, but maybe we can somewhat rearrange and redesign them when our task is a little bit more. Getting less credit for a group project, receiving unfair performance reviews, getting penalized more than others when something goes south. This is sadly an experience of millions of women and people of color at the workplace. Obviously, any form of discrimination is harmful, but the effect of daily microaggressions and indignities, when piled up, could be detrimental for someone's career. How exactly does this work? Well, Jessica Nordell and a group of scientists at the University of Buffalo tried to model this up. They created a computer simulation of a company where everyone is getting promoted based on the performance. However, projects done by women are valued a little bit less. Women might also occasionally miss the stretch project or get penalized more for a group assignment when it fails. Eventually, once the simulation is over, there are hardly any women left in the C-suite. To visualize this corporate dynamics, I decided to rearrange bee swarms in this step-like hierarchical layout. Paired with animation of moving dots either getting promoted or left behind, it helped create more intuitive and straightforward read, as well as more effective communication of the core idea of this experiment. And sometimes it's not about seeing more data, but about seeing the data differently. In such cases, we can proceed with some smooth transitions between different chart types, even when they are as different as a raster map and a regular bar chart. Last summer, we published a story that was very dear to me. It's a story about deeply rooted inequality and racial discrimination. It's about who gets to enjoy fresh air, cooler temperatures in summer, and safer neighborhoods, and who is left behind, being trapped in a scalding concrete jungle. To investigate urban tree coverage and inequality in access to green spaces, we partnered with a company that specializes at sensor data analysis. We were able to classify high-resolution satellite images into tree and non-tree surfaces. When looking at economic and racial makeup of certain neighborhoods, the so-called green-gray divide became obvious. As you can see, the difference between images on the right and on the left is striking. But how much of the area is actually covered by trees in a wealthy Baltimore neighborhood? Is it 80%? Is it 90%? Actually, our brain is not built for assessing with such precision, but the computer is designed to do just that. This question could be easily answered after counting pixels in some sort of geodata analysis tool. So why not rearrange the same pixels in a more comparable form then? Alrighty, using metaphor is not trivial, that's for sure, but when done right, it could add some special flavor to our work. Trump's presidency might have felt like a lot. By the end of it, I personally felt overwhelmed and bombarded with the news. With all those scandals around him and his family, it felt like we are just drowning in this sea of breaking news. But emotions and sentiments aside, we decided to take a data-driven approach, analyzed 4 years of the New York Times front page, pull every instance of him being mentioned in the headline, and come up with some sort of visual presentation of those turbulent times. My colleague Gus Vazarek and I ended up with this quite symbolic calligram. Well, of course, this could have been just a list of headlines, or even better, a searchable list, or eventually just a line chart with number of times Trump or his family members were mentioned. But this was not what we were after. We wanted our readers to take a minute and reflect, to contemplate what this 4 years meant for them and how they feel about it. This piece is more an experience than data consumption. And that was exactly our goal. In our opinion, Trump's presidency was messy and filled with scandals and lies, political instability and anxiety. And that's the feeling we wanted to convey with this pile of following headlines. Sometimes metaphors could make the data presentation a little bit more humane and emotional, and as a result more touching and hopefully thought-provoking. This was the goal of this story. I felt like the destruction of the biggest ecosystem on a planet is everyone's problem, and visualizing it with thousands of acres of forest being blown away into the void might emphasize the scale and the irreversible nature of damage done to Amazon rainforest over the recent years. Indeed, symbology and abstraction are great and help us visualize immense and complex data. But sometimes the data is so tangible and relatable, the most effective way of communicating it would be literal representation. Where am I in the waiting line for COVID vaccine? How do my state policies compare to those issued by CDC? Those were some of the hottest and the most important questions earlier last year. The whole concept of vaccination lines and priorities was so clear and straightforward that my colleague Ned Lash decided to represent it in the most relatable form possible. A literal line of tiny humans. Coloring those small pictograms effectively transformed them into bar charts that are easy to compare and process, making the visualization even richer. Finally, sometimes the data form we need already exists. We just need to tweak a few tiny things to take it to the next level. Map is a well-established data visualization form, and many of our readers are probably familiar with it. As simple and straightforward as it is, it lacks some flexibility and, more importantly, capacity for more data encoding. And talking about climate change is complicated. It includes lots of data, numerous variables and outcomes. So how about we turn this 2D map into a 3D representation, where the number of people at a high risk of environmental hazard are represented by the number of dots, and the colors convey multiple hazards that could affect certain areas. Truth is, the more granular building blocks of your data visualizations are, the more flexible your design could be. Here, for instance, we could slice the data, reshuffle our dots as we please, play with multiple metrics, create a more informative and more insightful story. And here is an illustration from one of my favorite data visualization books called Information Visualization Perception for Design by Colin Ware. Eventually, car is a car no matter how you approach it. But sometimes a view from an unconventional angle makes for a richer and more engaging experience. We as humans are large and contain multitudes. So do our stories. Thank you, everyone. Stay healthy and creative. Bye.